If you listen to music, you probably already heard this vocal effect. The stutter vocal effect used a lot by Skrillex, Fred again, but nowadays a lot of other music producers. And I think you should learn how to do it as well. So I'm gonna show you how to do this vocal effect, but once you know the technique, you can actually use it for other things as well, which we're gonna take a look at later in the video. So let's get started. Here is how you do the vocal stutter effect manually, meaning that you can actually create your own stutter pattern. So first we need a vocal. I'm using this one from Kashmir's sample pack. Any vocal will do, but I prefer longer notes, they seem to work the best. The next thing we need to do is create a note that is gonna trigger the vocal. In our case, it will be some white noise. So I'm gonna load up 3 times oscillator, change all of these to this one, so it's just noise. And then open up the settings, go here to wrapper settings and enable the envelope and adjust it. So we're gonna have a really short white noise. So it's sort of this white noise hit. Now let's create a stutter rhythm. So this is basically the rhythm that the vocal is going to be playing. So open up piano roll and whatever you put in here as the white noise rhythm will be what the vocal is going to be playing. So let's just create some rhythm, maybe some triplets. Something like this could work. So let's keep that in. And now what we need to do is create a noise trigger, so every time the noise hits, the vocal is enabled. And every time the noise is not playing, the vocal is quiet. So how are we gonna do that? So first, put your 3 times oscillator on mixer track number 6 and the vocal on mixer track number 7. It doesn't really matter which track you put it on. So let's change the track 6 to noise trigger, just so we are organized here. And this one is the vocal. So in noise trigger, which is the 3 times oscillator, we're gonna put peak controller. So go to controller and find fruity peak controller. Now put volume all the way up, tension all the way up, decay, we're gonna play with that, but somewhere around here. Now go to vocal, and as you can see, here is the volume of your vocal. So this is the volume and we can control it. So right click on the knob and press link to controller, and in here choose peak controller and just peak, because the LFO is not important. So just choose peak. Press accept, and now let's see what it does. So not much, we need to actually go back and increase the decay, and now we're gonna see the results. So increase the decay. And now the noise is controlling the vocal. So every time the noise hits, the vocal is enabled and it's playing. Every time the noise is quiet, vocal is quiet as well. But of course you don't want to hear the noise, so you can just disable it on the master channel like this. It's still triggering the vocal, but it's not playing. You can also just lower the volume of it if you want to. Anyways, so that's the first part of the effect done. And you can make any rhythm with the noise to make it cool or weird. So we can go crazy with it, and also the velocity is affecting the sound as well. So you can do many crazy effects and even use this as a lead melody. Now before I show you an example in one of my songs, note that if you are putting effects on the vocal, if you put them right at the vocal, they will also be affected by the noise trigger. So if you put reverb, like lots of it, you are not actually going to be hearing it too much. So you can hear the reverb, but also it's getting cut off by the noise trigger as well. So every effect put on the vocal is going to be affected by the noise trigger. If you don't want that, you can simply click on the vocal track, route it to another track, like number 8, and then put reverb on this track, which will not be affected by the noise trigger. So the reverb is gonna continuously play. So this is how you do the technique. Now let's take a look at more examples. So here is the same vocal used within a song. And I also made sure to affect other instruments with the same effect. So here is my noise trigger. It's playing this rhythm. Here's the vocal. But I also put the chords on the same track as the vocal, so they are affected as well. So the whole song is following this rhythm created by the noise. So here is how it sounds in the song. So I put some effects on the vocal just to make it pop off in the song more and utilize this effect in an even better way. So here are the effects that I put on the vocal. Of course, I routed the vocal to track number 7 and put the effects there so they are not affected by the noise, as I showed you before. This is with no effects. Then we have some reverb, quite a lot of it. Just gives it that atmospheric effect. Then I boosted the high frequencies, so we have a more crisp vocal. Then I put multiband compressor on it, and once again I boosted some of the high frequencies. Then I have Kickstar plugin on it to sidechain it. Then stereo shaper using the tutoriaI 2 preset to make it stereo, so it's playing from all directions. Adds even more to that deep house atmospheric effect, and then some more EQ, which I use as a filter later on. So that's the effects that I put on the vocal, and later I actually removed the reverb to sort of change it up. So here is the example song that I made with this effect. So yeah, I think it's a really cool technique. I also wanted to mention, if you like the sounds and samples that I'm using in my videos, or you just want to get good sample packs in general, then check out my one-of-a-kind sample pack platform, STPL Sounds. And why is it one of a kind? Because you only pay once and get access to all of my current and future sample packs forever. No more monthly payments, I'm tired of those. So check it out, link is below, use the code ARCADE15 to get $15 off and get access to all of the sample packs right away. Now let's get back to the video. Now let me show you a few more examples on how you can use it other than vocal effects. So of course you can use it on your synths as well, as I showed you here. Create interesting rhythms. And of course the presets and samples I'm using in this track are from my sample pack STPL Sounds other than the vocals, so check it out, link is below. So another use is to use drum loops to trigger some of your other sounds to create some unique effects. So we have this percussion loop. So the percussion loop will have the peak controller on it, so it's the trigger, and the mixer track with the melody loop will have the volume controlled by the peak controller. So now it sounds like this. So you can use any rhythm to control your other sounds. And of course, if we use a kick like this, we can actually flip it and do basically sidechaining. If you just flip the volume upside down to the left and then increase the bass. This is another way to do sidechaining. And we can do some crazy stuff and play around with it. So let's try to automate these parameters. This is an interesting one, right? At first it's triggering the sound and then it's sidechaining the sound. So yeah, you can get really creative with this. So another thing you can do is use the peak controller, but instead of controlling the volume, you can actually control some effects. So here's a little example song. Just a simple synth with a kick. And now let's say we want to control some effects. So once again, we create the white noise trigger. This time I went with a longer white noise. We put the peak controller on the trigger mixer track, which is the white noise. Increase the volume, tension, decay, just as before. But now let's actually link the peak controller to different things. So here's my synth on mixer track number 5, and I have sound goodizer, reverb, and delay on it. So let's say I click on the reverb. I want to control the reverb with the peak controller. So right click on the reverb, link to controller, and as you can see, I already did it. You just go here and choose peak controller, peak. Now once again, you create a rhythm with your white noise, and this time, every time the white noise is playing, the reverb knob will be increased. So let me just turn off the white noise. So reverb is at 0, but every time the white noise plays, it will be increased. But I also applied it to some delay. I applied it to the input, so link to controller, again, control peak, and actually you can adjust how much it affects the knob, which is here in the mapping formula. So if you want the volume to go from 0 to 50%, you're gonna do first half. That way, anytime the noise is triggered, it will only go to 50%. If you want it to go all the way, just do default. And if you want it to go from 50% to 100, then do last half. So you can see it mapped out here. So I want the first half, but I actually want a bit more than 50%. So you can just edit this number to 0.7, so it will be 70%. Hit accept, and now every time the noise is triggered, this knob will go up to 70%. Let's check it out. And last but not least, I also decided to affect the pitch. So right here, link to controller, the pitch, the second half of it. So it starts in the middle and goes up to full. In Serum, you actually have to enable it here as well. And then we have this effect. That way you have a very interesting glitchy effect almost, and you can apply this to any effect that you want. So there are many creative ways to use this. And last thing I wanted to tell you about this technique, that you can actually use it live as well. So I have the same example song from before, but this time let's try to create a unique rhythm by tapping it on a keyboard. Now let's try this out. But yeah, if you want to check out the keyboard that I'm using, it's actually FL Key 61 from Novation, which is a keyboard specifically made for FL Studio users, so you can pretty much control everything in FL Studio with the keyboard. Link will be below in the description. They also have small versions as well. Anyways, I hope you found this technique useful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!